Mitchell Schwartz, the Super Bowl champ with the Chiefs, 9 years, 4-time All-Pro, Super Bowl champ. Were you even taken back a little? This is a young team by mostly how well they played. Cold weather, on the road, biggest leverage point. I thought Buffalo would win. I was shocked by how well they played. Were you?
I was a little bit. To your point, they played their best game in Buffalo in the divisional round. So I think there's something to this team turning it on just a little bit. I mean, offensively, this is a team that was riddled with mistakes, with penalties, as you mentioned. And one of my big keys was, can they get to the line of scrimmage? Can they get set up? Can they do all the double cadences that Pat wants to do to see how the defense unfolds? And there were no procedural penalties. There were no delay of games. They took one timeout. There were no false starts, which everyone knows the offensive tackles and the right tackle in particular has had a lot of those. There were none of those against Buffalo. And the one mistake was McCole fumbling in the end zone. And other than that, I mean, I think of their 6 or 7 real drives, they scored on 5 of them. And they had the one drive where they had to punt and they had a kneel down at the end of the first half. So it was crisp. They were gaining a lot of yards. And most importantly, they weren't having the negative plays that they had throughout the rest of the season.
It does feel a little bit. We know psychology matters, right? You're talking young men, a lot of pressure. They become famous. There's a lot of pressure. The social media now is an element players never dealt with when I was younger. It does feel like Kansas City's in Buffalo's head a little. Even at the end of the game, that last drive, you can see Buffalo is so consumed with the clock. They're running Cook into the line. They're saying, we're not giving Mahomes the ball back. And I'm like, okay, Mahomes is in your head, and you're trying to tie the game. Do you sense Kansas City now with this win, it's kind of rent-free? They're in Buffalo's head a little.
I think so. And in your conference, you're going to have that team that you measure up against and that team that you have to get through every single year. We saw that with Indianapolis and New England for all those years. And Kansas City is the team everyone's trying to beat and everyone's trying to get through. We saw mini rivalry develop with Cincinnati the past few years, but Buffalo has been kind of this 5-year long-standing rivalry. And this was the game for them to avenge all the ails of the past few years, and they weren't able to do it. And to your point, I mean, my biggest takeaway of Buffalo's last drive is, why did they stop putting the pressure on Kansas City?
Yeah.
They were down 3 with 5 minutes to go, and goal number 1 is scoring a touchdown. Goal number 2 is getting Kansas City the ball back with as little time as possible, but you got to score the touchdown first. And they were driving the ball down the field. They were using tempo. They were finally had the Chiefs defense on their heels. And then every single time, I think it was 2 or 3 times, they rushed the ball. They slowed the pace way down. They lost yardage. They kind of ruined their flow and their rhythm. And it was just a really odd decision to start playing clock that early. I thought they needed to go score the touchdown.
Yeah.
And at the time, the thing that was working was putting pressure on the Kansas City defense. And for whatever reason, they just stopped doing that.
Mahomes is unique. And I remember years ago, Bill Polian was the GM, Hall of Fame GM with Peyton Manning. And we were talking one time about this. I think it was off the air. And he said, Peyton could be he called it a teeth clencher, that he'd get really tight in these moments. And he said, we were always trying to say, hey, Peyton, you're great. Just loosen up. It's okay. Peyton wanted to practice on Saturdays, which was family day with the Colts. And Peyton's like, I want another run through. They're like, no. Tony Dungy's like, no, we're prepared enough. Mahomes doesn't have that. He's the face of the league. He's on Netflix shows. Unbelievable pressure. And yet, there is something about that. He almost looks like he's playing backyard football in these moments when he's jockeying the ball back. Did you notice it early? I think that stuff is almost, Mitchell, I think some of it you can't coach. It's just a personality trait, mom, dad, whatever it is. Did you notice it early that, like a race car driver whose heart rate doesn't go up in a corner, that he was just different, that there was no anxiety in these moments?
Yeah, he's the guy that the anxiety isn't there, but the confidence in himself and the ability to perform tends to rise in those tough situations. And, his first 2 starts that second season, he threw for 10 touchdowns in 2 weeks. And, it could be easy to think that you're the young hotshot and you got things figured out. And he just didn't really care. He kept continuing to progress, continuing to get better. And you never really saw that affect him. And I mean, You go back to the 2018 season, we played the Patriots at home in the AFC Championship game, and I think we scored 0 points in the first half, and it could be very easy. You're going against Tom Brady and the storied franchise, all the Super Bowls, to pack it in, and all right, they're going to beat us by a hefty margin, and we'll see it next year. But we rallied all the way back. We got to overtime.
Yep.
They got the ball. They scored a touchdown. They won the game. But you could see throughout that season the resiliency he shows. And, that first year, all the talk was, oh, his dad played baseball. He played baseball.
Right.
And I think there could be a small component that he just got used to being an athlete, to being around other great athletes. He saw things and he inputted them into a system about how to perform under pressure, how to handle stress. And, maybe that's where the advantage of growing up in locker rooms has come to fruition because, he doesn't show any panic. I mean, one of the crazy Tom Brady stats, I think, until maybe the last Super Bowl or two is, I think for the first 8 or 9 Super Bowls, he had 3 total points in the first quarter of all those Super Bowl games because he was a guy that got so energetic and so amped up that it almost took away from what he was able to do in those first quarters.
Yeah.
And with Pat, that's just not the case. He brings it every single quarter, and he harnesses all that energy, all that anxiousness, all that excitement into playing better.
Okay, Baltimore this is a team that has blown out good teams. Unlike Kansas City, we're trying to find a flaw. This hasn't been a slow ascension. They crushed Detroit, crushed Seattle, crushed Miami. It feels different. This is one of those where even you as a Chief, do you look at this and think, have we met our match with this team a little bit?
I think so, because the Baltimore, they passed the eye test and they passed the advanced stats test. I mean, you look at like the DVOA stuff and they're top of the NFL and they look like the most complete team. You watch the games and you see the defense forming around. You see what Lamar can do on offense. They got the best kicker and, they've always done well special teams aside from Tucker. And so you are looking at almost going up into this buzzsaw. And, last week, Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, the playoff stuff, they're tied at the half and then he explodes in the second half and pulls away. And, I don't really see that Lamar can't win in the playoffs narrative anymore. So it does seem like you're going up against this well-rounded team. And the thing that would, quote unquote, worry me the most from the Kansas City perspective is I feel like the Kansas City defense has been awesome this season. We saw that last week. We've seen it throughout the playoffs. We've seen it through the course of the year. I feel like that's going to be a really great matchup between Kansas City defense, Baltimore offense. But the Chiefs offense, admittedly, has struggled throughout the year.
Yeah.
I don't think the Bills defense that they went against, being as injury-riddled as they are, was that great. Miami's defense, even more injuries, not that great. And so you're going up against this awesome defense, really physical, fast, playing with a lot of confidence. They can do some schematic stuff with McDonald, who might become a head coach here soon. So that's going to be the key matchup for me. Can Kansas City, get past 20 points? Are they going to struggle on offense? Are some of the poor habits and tendencies that we saw early in the season going to creep in? And, it's going to be a great struggle. Or shouldn't say struggle. It's going to be a great matchup. And, hopefully Kansas City does not struggle.
This is a great point by him. Both Miami and Buffalo's defenses fell apart. I mean, literally, Miami lost all their edge rushers. The Bills were losing all their linebackers. And now you face the best linebacking crew in the AFC with Queen and Roquan Smith. That's a great point that should be noted. We're probably elevating the Chiefs' hit-and-miss offense a grade above what they'll be. Mitchell Schwartz, Super Bowl champ, highest graded Chiefs O-lineman for several years. His brother, of course, is Jeff. And it's great, Mitchell, seeing you as always. I appreciate that. Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.